The Sniffer is a new terrifying creature added to Minecraft. But according to Mojang, the secrets behind it still urgently need to be uncovered. The Sniffer is somewhat similar to the Weeping Angels, suddenly appearing out of nowhere. Then it starts tracking the player, especially when players explore the brand new Pale Garden. If the player stares at it, the Sniffer will also remain still and stare back at you. But as soon as you slightly turn your head, it will immediately run towards you and launch an attack. This mechanism is quite fascinating, but it is not just a new unique gimmick. If you want to uncover the secrets of the creeper and understand the true story of Minecraft, we must first comprehend the heart of the creeper, because it explains the true nature of the creeper. The heart of the creeper is a wooden block, with a strange orange substance at its center. At night, if there are 2 logs around it, the heart of Crunch will summon Crunch monsters. Otherwise, they cannot spawn. This is similar to another thing we are very familiar with, the Warden. In other videos, Bubbly speculated that the Warden is something formed from bones and souls, generated by catalysts to protect themselves. And I think this is no different from the Crunch monsters we see. It is not a true living creature, but is created by the heart of the creek through branches, a combination of wood and twigs made to protect itself, meaning the creeper is merely a puppet. When players defeat the creeper, if there is a skulk catalyst nearby, it is a block that spreads skulk by seizing the souls of the dead. It cannot spread skulk. The catalyst produces particle effects indicating it has sensed the death of a nearby creature. However, due to the absence of skulk spread, we speculate that the skulk shrieker has no vitality to utilize from the skulk catalyst. In fact, there is another situation that can trigger a similar reaction, that is destroying an armor stand. When an armor stand is destroyed near the skulk catalyst, it also causes the skulk catalyst to react. But similarly, no skulk growth occurs. After all, the armor stand is not alive. Since it triggers a reaction without spreading the phenomena, it can only be initiated by the armor stand and the skulk shrieker. So I suspect the squeak monster isn't what it appears to be. It is a living creature. This makes sense when you consider the squeak monster's behavior. Each squeak monster only has 1 squeak heart bound to it. You can find it by attacking and following the particle effects. The squeak monster isn't as tough as you think. Actually, it is a fragile monster with only half a heart. But even so, nothing happens when you attack it. It doesn't take damage like other creatures. This also proves this thing isn't alive. It is merely a defense mechanism of the screeching heart, just as the catalyst relies on the Warden to protect itself. But that is not all there is to it. Similar to how the catalyst must be returned underground after the Warden has been inactive for a period of time, because it isn't powerful enough to sustain its own existence. The screeching heart cannot maintain the screecher's activity indefinitely either. Even if you turn away, the screecher will never wander more than 32 blocks from the screeching heart, because venturing too far will cause it to dissipate. The breeze heart cannot sustain its long distance existence. Since the breeze's sole mission is to guard the breeze heart, then it fundamentally doesn't need to travel that far. This fact was also mentioned during Minecraft Live, and confirmed by Mojang developers. The breeze cannot exist independently. It more closely resembles a golem generated by the new block, namely, the breeze heart. So now we've confirmed that the breeze is a golem, and this once again points the finger at the breeze heart. The golem as a puppet is not Mojang's hidden secret. The real secret lies within the heart of the golem itself. If we want to uncover this secret, and understand Minecraft's true story, we must figure out what the heart of the golem truly is. Because it is not just a terrifying wooden block. It is actually alive. This detail is crucial to the plot. So much so that Mojang has unintentionally mentioned it more than once. As described in 2 different official announcements, on both pages, they state that the heart of the skulk is a living block. This fact is also confirmed when the heart of the skulk is destroyed. You not only gain experience, but also progress in the Monster Hunter advancement. This is not because you defeated the skulk creature, but because you destroyed its heart. The heart of the skulk is the monster referred to here. But even so, we still haven't fully unraveled the mystery, because it doesn't tell us how this thing came into existence, and what is the true secret it hides. To uncover all of this, we must turn our attention to the branches. Branches are a new addition in this update. But more importantly, it is also the item obtained when destroying the crunchy heart. We can confirm that the crunchy heart is made of branches, because this is the recipe for crafting the crunchy heart. 2 logs and 1 branch block. This is very important. I will explain why later. However, this is not the only source of twigs. When you attack a crunchling bound to a crunchy heart, its surface secretes twigs, similar to how breaking trees in reality yields twigs. But here we face the chicken or egg dilemma. We know that twigs can be used to craft a crunchy heart, but twigs are only obtained when destroying or utilizing a crunchy heart. If we want to uncover the secrets hidden within the crunchy heart, we must figure out which came first. But fortunately, we don't need to guess blindly, because the answer has long been written before us. One of these 2 things can still be found elsewhere. Then the spearhead points to the Pillagers. In most theories about Minecraft lore, Pillagers are usually portrayed as villains, or play some equally important role. This time is no exception, because sticks naturally generate in chests within Pillager territories. This detail clearly confirms there is indeed some historical relationship between Pillagers and the heart of Ducky. But some might say, this doesn't necessarily prove anything interesting. Perhaps the Ravagers just went to the Pale Garden, dug some branches from the heart of Crunch, and then placed them in the box. If this is the only connection between the 2, that would still make some sense. But that is not the case. Branches are not the only thing connecting the Ravagers and the Crunchers. There are other things linking them together. Pay attention. When you spawn a creeper next to a group of Pillagers, they will run away in fear. Even the Pillager patrols, this monster programmed to be hostile to all creatures, also cower before the creeper. In the game, few monsters exhibit such hostile or fearful reactions towards another monster, and whenever such reactions occur, they are almost always closely tied to the lore. Endermen attack Endermites, because they are parasites that cause corruption. Piglins avoid soul-based constructs, because it triggers their PTSD related to steam. Therefore, if one creature avoids another creature, it is definitely related to the storyline. This time is no exception. You might think it is because the creepers attack them. They run away just like villagers fleeing from Pillagers, but the creeper did not attack the raiders. It didn't even care about them at all. Yet they were still terrified for unknown reasons. So the connection between the two lies here. As written on the wiki, the Pale Garden is a variant of the Dark Forest. And the Dark Forest is precisely the habitat of the raiders. This aligns very well with the facts, because the forms of the two types of trees are almost identical. The only difference is the raiders' woodland mansion only spawns in the Black Forest, but does not spawn in the Pale Garden. Marauders clearly have some historical connection with this biome and the Crunch Star, but they are evidently unwilling to have any association with it. Now all the puzzle pieces are finally coming together. We are just one step away from uncovering the truth behind the Crunchling mystery, the mysterious link between Marauders and the Crunch Star. We are missing only the final puzzle piece. To solve this, we must return to the starting point of the puzzle. Gloom. The situation with Skulk is quite similar. Skull catalysts use the life force of dead organisms to spread Skulk, and utilize wardens to protect themselves, while the Skewed Star serves a comparable function. It drains the life force of surrounding creatures to grow branches, and protects itself through skewed mobs. But how can we confirm it is truly absorbing the life force of other beings? We can further analyze this through the branch formation process. As I mentioned earlier, when you damage a skewed mob, the Gach Star secretes branches, but that is not all. If the Gach is in lava, or attacked by a warden, branches will not form. Branches only generate when the Gach is damaged by a player's dog, or player-triggered explosions. In other words, branches only form when hit by something carrying a player's essence. If this isn't enough to prove it relies on life energy, there is another block that can reveal this. Eye flowers are flowers generated in the Pale Garden. When they bloom, their color closely resembles the branches of the crunchy monsters. This detail may seem unimportant, but there is a very interesting phenomenon. When bees attempt to collect nectar from the eye flowers, they suffer poison damage, as if these flowers are draining their life force. This easily leads to the association that the Pale Garden might have experienced similar circumstances. Mojang refers to this place as a garden rather than a forest. It suggests that this biome may not have always been so lifeless. Perhaps it is more artificial. Maybe it appears this way and does not spawn friendly creatures. It is because the Pillagers created the creepy star, draining all life from the original Dark Forest. And through this understanding, we have almost solved all the puzzles. Only one small detail remains as the final step to unravel the secret of the creepers. And that detail is, why did the raiders create such a terrifying thing in the first place? This is the secret that Mojang has been hiding. Why do the creepers exist? To uncover this secret, the final answer points to the warden once again. In a previous video, I revealed that the warden is the result of experiments by ancient builders. These builders constructed most of the structures we see today, before we players inherited the Minecraft world. But in the end, their thirst for power led them to create something beyond their control. The Wither. The Wither drove them underground. They were forced to create the warden to counter the Wither, a guardian reveling the Wither in primordial power. They built the ancient cities, living around the warden, paying homage and worship to this new deity. Yet the warden ultimately became an uncontrollable force, forcing them to retreat to the end, leaving the city in ruins. So what does all this have to do with the warden? Because the warden is exactly what someone hoped the warden would become. And this is the key to solving the entire mystery. I mentioned earlier, their mechanisms are almost identical, but this similarity goes deeper than I thought. In fact, before the warden became the warden, it was originally planned to be a monster called the Stalker. Let me read the official description Mojang originally designed for this monster. The warden was originally called the Stalker. It remains static in a biome full of totems, until a careless player attempts to steal its crystal. This action will activate it. The lead developer intended the warden to be an invulnerable monster. A monster that cannot take damage. It only attacks when players try to seize its heart. Doesn't this sound somewhat similar to other monsters we know? If that isn't similar enough, take a look at the concept art Mojang created for the Stalker. A tall and thin, an asymmetrical monster, an orange heart on its chest. The Squeaker is actually a discarded low-end version of the warden. This is the final piece to solve the puzzle. Because all along, there is a group of monsters dedicated to creating low-end versions of what the ancient builders invented. That is the Ravager. So next, I will reveal the true story hidden by Mojang, the truth behind the creeper. Ancient builders created uncontrollable beings out of arrogance and fear. This guardian betrayed them, forcing them to hide forever in the end. But they were not the last race to see these cities. A group of pillagers fascinated by the magic of ancient builders, excluded from other villagers, because they refused to involve themselves in these mysterious magics. These exiled pillagers observed ancient builders constructing colossal wonders, creating life from nothingness. They were fascinated by the magic these builders seemed to possess. When the builders vanished into the end, the pillagers attempted to recreate that magic, built a woodland mansion to study the legacy left by the builders, created fake end portals, tried to replicate the sorcery they had witnessed, but they never succeeded. They couldn't create life like the builders did. Until one day, they ventured deep underground. A patrol of Calamity discovered the ancient city. They knew this place must have been created by the builders. They established their outpost in the ruins of the ancient city, discovered the catalyst left behind by the builders, a block capable of absorbing the life force of surrounding dead creatures. They knew they had to try once more, To perform the magic they had failed to replicate multiple times, they returned to the dark forest, began conducting experiments far from the mansion. After sufficient testing, they finally succeeded. They managed to extract life force from surrounding trees to form branches. Now they have mastered this essence of life. They can finally do what the builders did, manipulating the energy of life itself. They created a block based on catalysts, a heart capable of storing natural life force, an energy center, but it was even more powerful than they imagined. They created something too unnatural. A piece of wood stored more vitality than any other wood. As a result, it came to life. The heart of disaster requires more vitality to sustain itself. So it began to draw energy from the surrounding trees, transforming the once thriving black forest into a silent pale garden, sucking away the life force of those creators, bleaching the skin of the Illager villagers to a pale gray. It was also draining their life force. Now these pillagers finally felt fear. They had created something far too powerful, something they could no longer control. So they picked up their axes and decided to destroy it. But the heart of calamity was more powerful than they imagined. It gathered all the life force it had absorbed from the dark forest, creating a puppet to protect itself, because the raiders studied the catalyst too thoroughly. Now they are facing the warden they themselves created. Only then did they realize the horror of the deep dark would descend once more. Fearing the creation that had stolen their life force, they began to flee. They were terrified by the monster standing before them. For them, the Calamity Beast is a reminder of a failed experiment, an attempt to harness and rebuild a magic possessed by the builders. And this magic destroyed the builders. Now it is their followers' turn to repeat the same mistakes. If they hadn't tried to replicate the builders' methods, but instead learned from their mistakes, perhaps the outcome would have been different. This is the secret of the Calamity Beast that Mojang has been hiding. It is not just a new monster, but the second coming of the Warden, an artificial monster created from a living heart of disaster. That failed experiment that drained the life of an entire biome ultimately turned a group of curious villagers into the pale and resentful raiders of today.